Well, friends, we have done it. We have arrived. I was told on Facebook the other day, our humble little podcast was actually blamed by someone's parent for them questioning their gender identity. Now, we've had quite a few milestones over the years, but this one might top them all. Not sure how else to comment aside from to just take a big bow and say thank you. I'm totally bowing right now. You can't see me, just trust that's a thing that's happening. If you'd like to continue helping us warp impressionable minds with the twisted idea that it's okay to be queer and or trans, consider heading to patreon.com/The Atheist Manifesto and making a pledge to support the show. Helping us spread the gay and the trans this week is our dear friend Dalen. Thanks, friend. Your source for news, commentary, discussion, and debate at the intersection of the atheist movement and the LGBT rights movement. This is The Atheist Manifesto. Hello, friends, and welcome to the Atheist Manifesto. I am your host, Callie Wright, joined once again by my co-host, Ari Stumlin. What's up, Ari?
Hello, Callie. Did you know that it is the now times and not the 2008 times? That was 10 years ago. That is not right now. Right, Eli? Yeah, Eli knows what
That's
I'm talking
correct.
about.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong, I guess.
Wow, accusatory. It's weird. It's a tense place to start this.
Yeah.
Could have just agreed, supported her partner, but I guess she just didn't.
Yeah, well, that's who I am as a person. Anyways.
I bring out all your negativity.
You really do.
And it's just like, hey, everyone, love here. The other day, Celeste, we were sitting on a bench and she fed me a strawberry. I get in here and you're like, what's up, motherfuckers? Let's do this thing. I'm going to talk about how much DMT I did, and then I'm going to fist fight a bear.
Yeah, and it's Celeste without a T, you dick. So,
Okay. You know what?
Yeah.
You know what? There are 3 names that I will pronounce correctly, and mine is 2 of them.
Oh God, this is going to be a great episode. So, something I've been thinking about a lot lately is my relationship with my phone and social media in general. And I got to thinking about like how much time I spend on my phone. Like it's next to me, of course. And so like I was doing some reading, and in my age bracket, 25 to 34, I'm 33. So like I'm at the top, I'm almost old. The average person looks at their phone 50 times a day. But I don't actually know how much I look at mine, because like there are apps you can use to measure that. And like, I'm pretty sure I'd probably be horrified if I actually knew the number. And so like, obviously our phones are like the default thing to do when there's nothing else to do. And they're also our go-to source for social approval and validation. And there's this whole big conversation, and like a lot of it sounds like the kind of moral panic that's involved with any radical shift in society. Like there's electricity. Oh no, people are gonna have to not sleep during the, like, whatever. And of course, like, there's older people like, oh, the younger generation's wasting all their time. This newfangled thing, it's a waste of time, doesn't serve any purpose, blah, blah, blah. But like, there are a lot of us, like, especially queer and trans people, our relationship with social media can be more complicated than that. So like for lots of us, the first people who ever told us it was okay to be queer or trans did so in a Facebook group or on a message board. And maybe the first role models we had were Twitter or Facebook personalities, because we were completely isolated and didn't have anyone in our personal circles. But we're also really vulnerable on social media. Trolls come after us, often in huge numbers, and social media algorithms and community standards don't keep up. And they're often really unfairly enforced in favor of people who come after us and mistreat us. And so this can lead us to have a pretty complex relationship with social media, which can be a thing for anybody, of course. And so I've been thinking a lot lately about how to have a healthier relationship with social media. And I've read lots of hot takes that are like, oh, you should just delete Facebook, delete Twitter. And like, just being real, I don't think that's an option for me. Facebook has done a really, really good job of becoming like the main organizing point for my social life. And I frankly like don't have the time or energy to organize a new way of doing things. There are lots of people that I really enjoy interacting with that I know I'd probably never talk to if I didn't have it. So like, good job, Facebook. And I've noticed myself engaging in really scary addiction-like behavior relating to social media. And the problem with social media that I think makes it unique is that it's deliberately designed to provoke that sort of reaction. And, it's what keeps your eyeballs glued to the screen. And it, you feed the machine your likes and your dislikes, and it delivers ads to your eyeballs and gives you more and more of exactly what you want. So the question is, how do we protect ourselves? And so to have this talk, we are joined once again by our good buddy, Eli Bosnick. Welcome, friend.
Thanks for having me.
I'm Eli. I can't talk in a normal voice ever. Says me. Wow, good job.
How terrible that would be.
Right. I'm Eli Bosnick. But so I remember seeing you start posting about this kind of stuff months ago. And, you were like, tweeting out a lot of this stuff about how, social media is designed to deliberately provoke, addictive sort of reactions and feed into outrage and that kind of stuff. So like, can you kind of tell me the story? Like, was there something in particular that happened that made you start moving in that direction and thinking about that? Or was it just sort of like a culmination of a bunch of different stuff? Or like, where'd that come from?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it was conversations with Tom from Cogdis who sort of first turned me on to this. Tom is my favorite Luddite. And so, the moment someone wrote on his Facebook something he didn't like for the first time, he was like, "Oh, Facebook is cancer. I will kill the Facebook. Find me the book where the faces are. I will destroy it." But the thing about Tom is like, he is genuinely one of the smartest people I have the privilege to talk to. And so we started this conversation, just him and I, talking about what this was, and what he really convinced me of, and what I've come to believe more and more, is that what our generation is going through with social media is what every generation goes through with the new technology. And I think one of the most informative articles I read on this, and I'll try and find it so you can find it in the show notes, but anyone could just Google like baby boomers phone addiction. And it was a really interesting study that was done in the like 70s or 60s or so, where it dealt with like baby boomers and their relationship to the phone, and as opposed to their parents' relationship to the phone. And what seems to happen is every new piece of technology connects us more in a really interesting way. And then the first generation to have it and use it does it in an unhealthy way. And then the next generation, they kind of figure it out. Just the way we kind of figured out the phone. My mom used to tell me stories of like her mom or dad picking up the phone and being like, "Get off the party line. I got to call the Bennigan's and get us some reservation for your Sweet 16, phosphate," right? And we don't have that problem, right? We all remember when we got cell phones, but it was really to check in like where we were, or at least that was my case. And like, I call people, but like if people call me, I certainly don't talk for hours and hours. If someone calls me, I'm like, "Why didn't you text?" Right? And so like,
same.
we didn't have that addiction to that in the same way that our generation is addicted to social media. And interestingly enough, having a much younger sister, my sister's 13, she's not addicted to social media at all. Like, she likes Snapchat and streaks with her friends and like hanging out, and she posts her little stories and stuff. But like, I was like, "Yeah, but don't you?" Because I've become a crazy person because my generation is social. So I was like a year into fighting with I Hate Jews 96, and I was like, but my sister's name is Lily. I was like, "But Lily, what do you do when they say logical fallacies on your timeline?" And she literally sent me back. I will never forget this because I saved it. Is a picture of her dog, and it was just the caption, "Sophie," that's her dog's name. "Sophie says block the haters." And I just realized like, oh, she's not affected. Their generation is not affected in the same way because it's not brand new. They were raised with it the way we were raised with the phone, and therefore don't have the same addictive qualities and properties. So one of the things that I think really helps frame this conversation is not, what do we do about social media? It's coming for us, but like, okay, guys, it's our problem. What do we do about social media? We're the ones who can't handle it. How do the millennials make it better? Because the truth is, the Zennials and the younger ones, and honestly, Generation X, our parents and boomers, they don't have the same issues with it. It really is an our generation problem, but I think it's one that's pretty easily fixed, and we can talk about that in a bit. But that's the sort of frame I wanted to put on the conversation, the optimistic one.
Yeah, one of the things that I was reading this guy Tristan Harris. He's like a media like technology ethicist, and he used to be in charge of a certain department of design for Google, and he studies the ways that you can design things ethically so people are spending their time well as opposed to like just being addicted and spending their time. And one of the things that he was talking about is the difference between like, so there's the moral panic of like, oh my God, there's this new thing and it's taken over and it's terrible, versus like, oh, this is just our generation's new thing. And so like, some people said the same thing about newspapers, right? Like you have your face buried in a newspaper and you're not interacting with people, and that's going to destroy your social life. And so there's like that meme that shows like, a bunch of kids on their phones in a museum. And then there's the picture below it of all of the people in the 50s on the subway reading the newspaper, not interacting with each other. Like it's the same thing. But the argument that he was making is that there is something unique. And of course there's something unique with every advance, but he was sort of arguing that the threat or the challenge posed by social media is that it's uniquely endless. So like a newspaper has an end, right? You have your head buried in the newspaper, and like, I mean, unless you're just going to read the same thing 10 times over again, there's a beginning, there's an end, and then you put it down and move on to the next thing. But in theory, like the Facebook, news feed is endless, right? I mean, you can literally scroll for forever and do that. And that's sort of a unique way that it's different. So that might be a justification for a higher level of moral panic, maybe.
So I think that's true to some extent, which is that each piece of technology, from newspaper to the telephone to the internet itself to social media, has gotten better at keeping our attention, just as like the TV is better at keeping our attention than radio, right? So like one of the first panics about TV was like, the average family spends an hour a night listening to the radio, but now 3 hours a day at the television? And you're just like, right. And then you look at our generation, we watch way less TV than our parents did, way less TV than our older brothers and sisters did. We play way less video games, although there's some question about sort of what is now defined as a video game. So
right.
Yes, the tech gets smarter, but it also means that the tech can be healthier. And again, I think we are the first and the last generation to have an unhealthy relationship with this, much as our older brothers and sisters were the first and the last generation to have the 97-hour TV average, right, where they're just watching the same episode of Maury over and over again. And again, TV is unlimited, right? Those bars didn't come up, and our parents' were like, what are you going to do without the bars? You'll just watch it forever, right? And the thing is, we learned to manage it, and just in the same way, I think the younger generation, our younger sisters and brothers and our children, the Zennials, will learn to manage it better as well.
It's interesting because with this changing technology, it's causing these rapid cultural shifts that we didn't see in the past when we didn't have this exponential growth of technology. So like Eli was talking about with the phones, that changed the culture, because now you can call people whenever, you can talk to someone. You don't have to write letters. You don't have to, get together whenever it is on your normal time that you get together. You can just pick up the phone and call them. And then, with social media, it's the same kind of thing. It's really changing the cultural landscape. So like now when I talk about, my friends in my social circle, for the most part, I'm talking about people that I interact with on social media. We're talking right now, we're in 3 completely separate areas of the country, thanks to this wonderful technology. And so that's really kind of changed the culture of how we interact with people. So like Eli said, for me, when I think about phones, since I grew up with phones, it doesn't seem like a huge cultural shift, although to people, who didn't grow up with like cell phones, that is probably a huge deal. And so, the same thing is happening with social media. I didn't grow up with social media. I first got Facebook when I was like 16, and I was kind of late to the party among my friends. But it has definitely drastically shifted the way that we think about, our social circles and the way that we do our social time. So I think it's just going to take some time, like Eli said, for the next generation. They've grown up with it. It's like, yeah, that's how we socialize.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it comes down to recognizing how these things are built to keep our attention. And so that guy, Tristan Harris, that I was talking about, he talks about it like it being a virtual slot machine. So like one of the things we understand that's addictive about slot machines is the idea of like you pull the lever and a thing happens. And the sort of digital analog to that is how you slide down your Facebook feed to refresh it, or your email or your text messages or anything like that. And there's sort of that dopamine hit that you get, like, I'm controlling this thing. I did a thing and I get validation from it. And, the sort of social validation that comes along with getting likes and all of that kind of stuff. And I know just reading about this stuff, just like over the last week or so, when I kind of thought like I wanted to do this episode, just being more aware of that has helped me move away from that and be more deliberate about the ways that I use social media. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. It's all about whether or not you do something mindfully or mindlessly. And so the more mindfulness that you can bring to any activity, the better it is. I mean, we've all read mindlessly, right? That 8 a.m. reading the thing for class, and you're just like, what did I read? I don't know. This black guy killed this lady's mockingbird, and Atticus is trying to stop her. Right? That's mindless reading. And then there's mindful reading, right? The seventh Harry Potter book, when you flopped down onto your bed and you were just like, let's find out what that first time there was no more concentrated flowing brain than when I was taking in those words. It is sad how much of Harry Potter I have memorized word for word because I read it mindfully. Right. The other, and to defend the technology a little bit, and I may get side tackled out of frame by Tom, who has flown across the country, but to defend it, if you didn't like a TV show, it didn't get canceled. If you didn't like something on the radio, it didn't stop being on the radio. When you learn to control social media, it is excellent, because as smart as the algorithms are, and there's a lot of really interesting writing on what the algorithms are and how much more they track than we sort of think they do, and we could chat a little bit about that. They're really dumb and let me think of a they're really silly. They're really silly, and they're very, very easy to fool into getting what you want out of that experience, right? I can't be watching TV, have the Jersey Shore come up and be like, no Jersey Shore. I can change the channel, right? But I can't actively affect how my television shows me TV. And you can kind of do that now with Hulu and Netflix and stuff like that, but you could do that with social media. One of the best experiments I loved about this, and it's on Google Scholar, people can look it up, is that they just had people go through and comment something nice on the last 5 posts of like 10 people that they wrote down before they went on their Facebook. And then they compared people's experience of Facebook over the next week with people who hadn't done that, right? Who hadn't actively gone back and like interacted with those things to prove that that's what they wanted out of the algorithm. And the algorithm was just like, you like to see Callie's haircut pictures, more haircut pictures of Callie. More statuses by Callie I give you. You want more. Mm-hmm. And it does. So it's so easy to train. The funny thing is, we tend to mindlessly forget to train ourselves to do that. And we accidentally train our social media to show us Jew Killer 69 tweets. Right, because we know like the way psychology works, we're more likely to actually react to something that outrages us than something that makes us feel good or something positive. Right, but again, it's a feedback loop, right? The more you refuse to respond to those things, the more you bring positivity to your social media, the more the algorithm will show you things to interact. They need to sell you the grinder that looks like a Pokeball. They do not care whether they send it to you via happiness or sadness. Sadness works better, so it's their tactic, right? If you're standing on the street corner selling fish, fresh fish works better than the Jews started all the wars. But in social media, the Jews started all the wars works better. But you can change that very, very quickly. And honestly, over the last few months, through a combination of putting in fixes to make sure that I'm engaging my social media more mindfully, and the fact that I'm starting to train my algorithms, my Facebook feed is so happy. It's just like Lucinda's like, I built a fairy hut and I'm gonna catch me one. And I'm just like, yes, heart, that's so great. And I will see 9 million more of it.
But what about the
Right,
people who complain then that you're just creating your little echo chamber and you're not going to see anything that you disagree with and you just unfriend people because of political disagreements and that's not how the real world works and fuck your feelings?
My thing is, own it. Own it.
And that's how the world works.
Yeah,
all
absolutely.
the time.
Exactly.
As an employer, as a business owner, in every conceivable corporate atmosphere, no one's ever been like, y'all know about Hitler? I want to talk about him. Never. No one ever, right? And especially now in a more media and woke world, you need to be incredibly aware of what you say around people. You know, and it's crept into all aspects of my life. You know, one of the things I do is I run a show and I'm a magician in corporate environments. And I used to go to corporate gigs where they'd be like, and then later we're going to a strip club. And now they're like, so we had a sensitivity training last week. And I
Right.
realized that I assume male pronouns just right off the bat. I'm like, so this guy, and that's on me, and I think it's because my dad just really pushed that on me.
We're still
It's just
going to
me,
the
you
strip
know?
club. Just, be respectful and keep in mind that the women have chosen this path for themselves, and that is empowerment.
Exactly. Or if they haven't, they're pretending that for you.
Well, and my thing is
We go to
for
different
so
clubs.
many of us, I mean, literally stepping out your front door is stepping outside your bubble, right? Because I still live in a world where I have a reasonable expectation that me existing in public might get me killed. Or at the very least, people saying really awful shit to me or physically assaulting me. So I can't help but be reminded that there are people in the world who disagree with me. All it takes is for me to go to a news website or turn on NPR or exist in public to figure out that the world does not match my worldview, right?
How to hear
I think-
anti-trans rhetoric. Step 1, be trans. Step 2,
Right,
profit.
that's
or something. I
Right.
don't know.
So my thing is if you're turning your corner of social media into a bubble and you feel like that's what's going to mean that you're having a healthier relationship with it, I don't see the problem with that. And there are lots of people who say that what makes it better for them is to get out of their bubble, right? So they deliberately go to engage in conversations with people who disagree with them on certain issues. And if that's legitimately a healthy interaction for them, then sweet, do
Yeah.
that. And I think it comes back to what Eli was saying about just being more mindful and thinking about why am I actually doing this? What am I trying to accomplish in life? And is this helping me or hurting me in those goals?
How does this make me feel? I mean, there are people who probably like to argue on Facebook. There are people who like to zipline. People make bad choices is the point. There are lots of people who make bad choices. Ziplining, of course, is significantly worse than arguing on Facebook or hounding trans people off the internet. It's the worst thing you can do. But the point is that people are allowed to do it. You just need to actively make the choice. And what I realized through sort of examining my social media mindfully is that I wasn't getting what I wanted out of social media because it was putting the wrong inputs into the computer, right? I was putting in the wrong punch cards to get the punch cards out that I wanted. And it really is that simple. And it's something so easy to affect and change.
And another thing that I've noticed as I try to sort of step back and be more mindful about the way that I interact with social media, a lot of that is just sort of recognizing that most of the time when I'm on it, I'm wasting time. I'm literally just scrolling through Facebook. A lot of what I see, I have zero interest in. A lot of it makes me really mad. A lot of it makes me really sad and scared of the world. And for some reason, I just keep doing it. And when I spend, an entire day off Facebook, that FOMO creeps in, the fear of missing out. What amazing thing is happening that I'm missing out on? What thing happened in a friend's life that I'm not going to know about because I didn't get on Facebook today? Or what event is happening near me that I'm going to miss out on because I didn't sign into Facebook today? And I guess my thing is I first got on social media. I think I was a junior in high school. So I was still pretty young, but I had lived, plenty of my teenage years without social media. And I missed some stuff, I guess, but there was nothing that was life changing. And so is it as simple as just saying I'm gonna live. I'll be okay. If it's that important and it's someone that's that close to me, they've got my phone number to shoot me a text. Like, that one's something I'm still kind of navigating through.
Yeah, and here's the other thing about it that I think is really true is you learn what parts of your life are necessary and which ones aren't, because you don't do those habitually, right? You don't check on the people you really care about. Like, I wonder, I'll just scroll through, see how the people in my life I care about, right? You have a vague idea that like you're going to miss something, but you don't actually you don't log into Facebook being like, I want to make sure I know how everyone's doing. You're just like, click. You just hit F and then enter and then you're there.
Right.
Right. And so for a lot of us, it's about entering that space mindfully and recognizing, okay, here's what I'm here to do. So like, just another example, like my magic show, when we arrange who's performing each night, that's done through Facebook, because just Facebook groups make that easier. So when I go on, I'm like, okay, I'm checking my Facebook group things, right? Or I'll do that and I'll be like, there it is. My Taste of Magic Performers group, I check, I know what I'm doing, and then I leave. Now, maybe there's something interesting along the way, but that's very different than logging on and just looking for something. Mm-hmm. The other thing that I think we need to acknowledge, and I don't know that everyone listening will relate to this, but they kind of will, which is that we're performers, and we are the first generation for whom social media is access to people you like who make content.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? It's the culture of micro celebrity, right? So like, we all know we're real people, right? But for some people, I'm the funny movie guy, and y'all are the Gaytheist Manifesto with a capital G and a capital M.
Right.
Right? So checking in on your Facebook, it's a peek into your world. Just like when I go on Twitter and I see like pictures of Patton Oswalt's daughter, or him, like his latest theory on Heath Ledger's Joker portrayal, right? Like, I get all these little like random thoughts that went through my favorite celebrities' heads in a way that like we never had before, right? There were gossip magazines, but even gossip magazines were like Marilyn Monroe and JFK at the Dum Club, right? It wasn't like Marilyn tweeting like, took a big poop today, tweet, right? So there is
At
this
real Donald
false-
Trump.
Right. There is this, and it's crept into politics as well. There's this false closeness that has crept into social media. The idea that you know people you follow on Twitter. The idea that you know people whose podcasts you listen to. And, you know, I love our listeners, and I'm sure you love your listeners, but like, there are people who begin in the middle of a conversation when they talk to you that you were not having, right? Who's just like, there's not even a hi, my name is. They're just like, so on episode 147. And I'm like, 3 years ago?
Right.
You have the middle of a statement about something I wrote down as a joke 3 years ago. Sure, let me go through my script and find what you're mad at me about.
Right.
And then in social media, that is mixed in, and purposefully so, that is mixed in with like pictures of my grandniece, right? So it's all, and again, the whole point of social media is to make it feel as real as possible. Mm-hmm. That's what keeps you addicted, is you have to feel like it's real, right? And the moment you have some distance from that, you're just like, oh, okay, I actually don't need to talk to Kill the Jews 66. That's just the thing. I can just ignore that. I don't have to deal with that. I don't have to let that be part of my space. And what's funny is that's become a little bit of an excuse for abuse, right? There are people who are like, come on, man, it's just ones and zeros. Like, stop freaking out about the hate and the death threats and the gore porn being sent to you.
Right. Well, and I see so many people like, Facebook isn't real life. And I'm like, I get what you're saying, but it is. Like, it because those are people saying that stuff. You know what I mean? So like I don't entirely disagree with that statement, because like I understand what that person is trying to say when they say that. And I mean, I've seen a ton of people say it, but like to me, it's more complicated than that.
Yeah, it's not that Facebook isn't real life. Facebook's as real as it is to you. and not to get all wooey, but like all conscious experience of the
Right.
world is an illusion, right? Like it's
Right,
not,
right.
you can scoop out the parts of your brain that love your children. There's no real life and fake life. They have drawn an arbitrary line between the digital and the physical, and that's fine, right? But like, you can also have an ex-wife who's secretly plotting to poison you, who you think loves you, and that's not real life either, right? So
Yeah.
we can play in those lines of reality. The important takeaway for me from that is not Facebook's not real, don't take it so seriously. It's Facebook only needs to be as real as you want it to be. And it can be, incredibly deep connections, the way that, and same is true of podcasting, true of any digital content. It can be incredibly deep connections like you make with your listeners, and it can be dick joke movie reviewers like we make with our listeners, right? Or somewhere in between, right? And that's your choice, but it's only your choice if you make the choice, because the social media will just do what gets you to engage the most, and they're starting at Jews started all the wars, because it
Right.
works.
Right. Well, and that kind of leads nicely into the social approval, right? Because as humans, most of us are inherently social creatures, and we all at some level crave validation and approval and connection with the people around us. And social media can provide, like you were saying, very real experiences of that, and sort of very contrived experiences of that. So I was doing some reading about like when people tag a picture of you, right? So like every time you get a Facebook notification, it's like a signal to your brain that like this is a person trying to make a connection with you. And so it's that dopamine hit that you get from that happening. But when you look at what's going on behind the scenes, what happened is my friend John posted a picture of me. Facebook's algorithm recognized my face and says, "Hey, do you want to tag Callie?" Oh yeah, I guess I want to tag Callie. So it wasn't even necessarily my friend that initiated that interaction. It was the design of the app that initiated that interaction. So like, is it real or is it contrived? It's kind of both. And so just sort of thinking through, what of those connections is genuine and what of those connections is invented by the design of the app to keep you engaged on, that somewhere on that spectrum of being artificial versus real. And, I will totally cop to being as vulnerable to this as anyone, maybe even more so. Like, I just got my hair cut and I love my hair and I posted a picture of it, and I'd be lying if I said it didn't feel awesome that there's like hundreds of people that like that picture and tons of comments talking about how much they love my hair and how awesomely gay it is and like all that. So, like, I like that about Facebook. I like that happens on Facebook, and I'm still kind of trying to decide, like, is that a healthy thing or is that not a healthy thing? Am I going out of my way to do that? Am I doing the like, oh, I'm fishing for compliments, but it doesn't actually really mean anything because these are all my friends and they're saying that to be nice and they'd say it anyways, and it's not real and it's not genuine. And then, of course it gets right back into that question of like, is it real? Is it not real? And like, we can have those questions about face-to-face interactions too. So is it really any different on social media? So like, I'm still kind of working on how to navigate through all of that.
Yeah, but I mean, the thing about that is that like, oh, you're just posting it for the likes and the comments. It's like, if you were going out to TGI Fridays with the girls, you'd be like, so, and they'd be like, ah, right? That's what we do. When if my friend comes with new hair, I know how to socially interact. I wouldn't let everyone make that noise and be like, this isn't real. I haven't made decisions about your hair yet. I will let you know what I think later.
Right.
Yeah.
Considered one-on-one. I will give you feedback on your hair, which you seek, right?
Yeah.
And so, so again, it depends on, in my answer to that is, it depends on your approach to it. Are there unhealthy ways to seek approval and attention in all forms of life, from in-person to Facebook? Yes. Mm-hmm. Are there healthy ways? Yes. Are some of them the exact same words with different intentions? Yes. Mm-hmm. And I don't think we can blame the technology for that. I think we can figure out how to use it that makes ourselves the healthiest, right? We can figure out the healthiest way to do it for ourselves. And we all have that friend who like should probably delete Facebook. Right? We all know, we're all like, you should probably just stop posting and take some time, read a book, right? But we also have that friend who just Callie, I'm sure you're this friend for a lot of people who just like everything you post is awesome. And since Ari's gotten their dog, like that's been true as well. It's just like dog pictures, right? And so I'm like all the dog pictures, and then I get all the dog pictures. I train
Right.
the algorithm to do what I want it to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
The thing about, social media being a curated experience is that not only do you get to decide what you want to see, like Eli said, but you also get to decide what you want to put on there. And, lots of people use that in lots of different ways. Some people will only put, the happy, positive stuff in their life, and they won't put anything that, maybe something that they did wrong or something that they're sad or angry about, because they just don't use social media like that. And then, sometimes people might get the idea that, oh, their life is perfect because they never post anything negative. With the girlfriends at TGI Fridays, they might, post their selfie from the table, but then they're probably not going to post the picture of Amy, barfing from her 7th $1 margarita. Maybe they would,
Right.
Depends on what kind of friends you have. They'd be like, oh my God, Amy threw up. It was so funny. La, 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 la.
Right.
Winky face emoji. But yeah, I mean, it is interesting to look at different people on Facebook and see, what type of things they tend to post. And it's different for different people. And I kind of vacillate back and forth between that, depending on what it is that I'm looking for in social media. Like sometimes I just feel crappy and my mental health is bad and I just want to, just let people know about it or just vent about it and have people who understand say that they understand. And then sometimes I'm like, oh, look at this cute thing my doggy did. She's the greatest and bestest in the whole world. I mean, I guess I'm not sure if there's a right way or a wrong way. Like, some people are very like only positive things on Facebook only. And it's kind of a toxic positivity kind of thing. Like you're not allowed to feel anything negative. You're not allowed to express your real emotions that you have, only positivity. And then some people also, take it to the other extreme where they're only posting about negative things in their life and really ruminating on that. Again, I don't have the answers. I don't know if there's a good balance to that or if it just depends on the individual and what you want to get out of it personally.
Yeah, I think it has a lot to do with just engaging in social media, understanding that the pictures you get of people from it are incomplete, and understanding that like you're never seeing every minute of a person's life. And so like I see a lot of people who say like, oh, well, I only post happy stuff, but that's not necessarily who I am. So like the me that's on Facebook is not the me that exists in real life. So like the people who primarily know me through Facebook don't even really know me. And a lot of people struggle with that. And I'm one of those people. I had a conversation with a friend of mine once because I used to be that person on Facebook that was just like yelling and screaming and angry all the time about everything. And I didn't realize I was doing that. And I had a good friend of mine approach me and was just like, hey, if this is what you want to do it, but just understand that the Callie that I see on Facebook is not the Callie that I know in real life. And if that's the way you want to use Facebook, that's okay. But I just want to make sure that you understand that there is a difference between the way that you come across online versus the person I know you to be. And I mean, just recognizing that and thinking about that really has sort of informed the way that I engage and the way that I think about people who I see post often. So understanding the algorithm, like what I've trained the algorithm to show me and what people choose to share about themselves. If I'm thinking like, gosh, this person is really angry, they only post angry stuff. It's like, well, maybe that's the way they use Facebook. That's not necessarily giving me a complete picture of them as a person. And so I think just engaging with it, knowing that context, I think is at least it's a good start. I mean, I don't know if that's, the entirety of it, but I know that's really sort of helped my engagement in knowing that like, that's one of the ways when we say like Facebook isn't real. I think that's at least one area where that can be a really valid expression of like, it's not real in the sense that you're not getting a complete picture of people and who they are based on what they post, because not everyone shares the entirety of themselves.
I mean, but to be fair, that would be true in IRL interactions as well.
Absolutely.
You only spend as much time with the person as you do, and you don't know what's going on in their head. Even if you were to spend all day, every day with them, you still don't know exactly what they're thinking. Maybe they don't even know exactly what they're thinking. Ooh, psychology.
And to add to that, there is no real quote unquote you. right? And
Right.
the thing about a curated existence on Facebook, unlike a curated existence in real life, especially for us, but I think this is true for everybody. You know, Bo Burnham has that beautiful thing at the end of Make Happy where he talks about, you know, we were a generation demanding to perform and the market provided it. And so everybody is just performing all the time. Like social media is so much about performance, but as actual performers, which the three of us are, you know, one of the questions that I ask myself when it comes to Facebook is, okay, what is my Facebook for to the majority of the people who see it? And for me, it's to make them laugh. It's to lift them up. It's to make them feel a part of the community. It's to make them feel, and by that I mean sort of the atheist, secular, humanist community. It's to make them feel like they're in touch with the better parts of my life. And so that's what I choose to share, because that's why people tuned in to the website of facebook.com/Eli, right? I try to give them the website they want, and I try and do it in the way that I think will best improve their experience. I want someone, when they scroll past my post, to see something that's interesting or will make them happy or make them feel loved or make them feel welcome or something like that. And do I slip up? Absolutely. Just like we slip up in person, right? Sometimes I see my friends and they come over and they're like, Eli, how are you? And I'm like, fuck off. And they're like, oh, you're being a dick right now. And I'm like, oh, sorry. Right. And that's true of Facebook as well.
Right.
Right. The difference is that, like, we somehow think Facebook, we can't make mistakes. And, you know, one of the jokes that I made, so my favorite thing to do in the world is to go to Ari's old pictures
Right.
every couple of months and just
Back to the
heart them.
beginning of the episode. That was the thing I was
Creepily.
talking about.
I just enjoy it. It makes me laugh, right? But not everyone knows that that's a joke that Ari thinks is okay, that it's active
Right.
participation, that it's not me being transphobic. Like, they don't know. They don't know
Right.
me, right? So I create the best possible environment in that space, given that not everyone would understand, right? And you need to give the credit. The truth of the matter is, like, sometimes people won't understand. And it's okay to take a moment to step back and to be a little more humble and understand that you're not always going to communicate what you want to, right? So, like, you know, and this is something that I think social media does, is it very much allows us to be afraid to apologize in a way that we don't need to. And whenever I see someone get in trouble, especially in our community or online or whatever, there's always this bizarre moment of doubling down, right? And all I'll say to that, right, not to name names or point fingers, is that I don't think anyone has said more ignorant stuff online than me. I'm pretty sure no one is wrong more often than I am. I'm just better at being like, oh, sorry, I messed up. And look, are there people who have written me off? Sure, but it is this insistence that your brand stay consistent, that you've never been wrong, that anything that's part of this cultivated identity has to be permanent and fixed and forever, and that all who are attacking a statement are against you or enemies or this or that, I think is a huge part of the problem of social media, and the problem that our generation has with it is that we've forgotten about the ability to misspeak that we all have in person, right? That we all do 1,000 times a day, where we're just like, where we misspeak or we say something insensitive, and we're like, oh my God, I'm so sorry, right? And everyone moves on, right? It's the idea that it somehow feels forever, and in many ways is forever, that we need to break ourselves up. We need to break ourselves from the habit of that being the, quote, real us.
Yeah, well, and I think that comes back to the separation that comes from the fact that you're not directly in front of a person, because there's a lot that's lost when you don't have body language to read from, or like the sound of someone's voice to read from, because I think there is it's easier to double down and not recognize when you've done something hurtful and just push back and dig your heels in. And I think it's also easier to write people off as having bad intentions or being unredeemable. So like I think it's easier for both of those things to happen, and I think that's where a lot of that comes from. Because, I mean, I know, just being completely real, I am way more likely to interact with someone in a charitable way face to face than I am on Facebook. And I try to stay aware of that. and give people a chance to be like, hey, so I'm not sure if you know how you came across, but like, this is what I'm hearing. Is that what you're actually trying to say? Like, I've had that conversation in person way more times than I have on Facebook. And there's a really complicated interaction of like, you have more control over your space online because it's much easier to just like hit the block button and this person goes away than if they're in front of your face. And that's just like with anything else. I think that's a good thing and a bad thing because it's easier to write people off. But, and there's this instinct that like, I don't have to interact with shitty people and I'm not gonna. And that's good and that's healthy in a lot of ways. But I also do think it leads to that more sort of disposability culture, I guess, if that's
definitely.
a phrase. And that's something that I try to stay aware of. And I try to, it's hard to delineate that line between like, oh, this is honest ignorance manifesting itself. And this person is like really trying to learn or made an honest mistake and can be talked to and, doesn't really think as horribly as the statement comes across versus like, oh, this is just a really shitty, toxic person that I need to separate myself from and move on. And then I also think that it's important to understand that like, maybe you don't need to like worry so hard over that line. Like I analyze things about like, am I close enough to this person that it's worth me like reaching out and trying to have a conversation? Or like, I'm seeing this person, they're saying a bunch of shitty things. I don't necessarily think they're a bad person. They're just somebody like, I don't want to see this on my newsfeed. So unfriend, and it's not even that I'm writing that person off as shitty or anything like that. It's just like, that's an interaction that's not worth my time and energy. And I think sort of reframing things in that way, I think is helpful because I've done a lot of that, just like, random friend requests, after I guest on a podcast or something like that, I get, friend requests from people who, and I'm like, cool. Yeah. Like I'll, scroll your profile, make sure you're not a Nazi. And then like, okay, as long as we've got some mutual friends, I'll friend you. And if I see a bunch of shitty things, I'm like, have a personal message. Like, so here's what you said was problematic and here's why, and here's all the history. Like all of that stuff is valid to do if that's a thing you want to take the time and energy to do. But again, I think it goes back to understanding the purpose of that. And like my existence on Facebook is not about taking people with incomplete worldviews and educating them out of their ignorance. Like that is a 100% awesome thing to do if that's what you want to do. But like, we have a podcast for that. And I have private conversations with people that I actually have investment in. And I think a trap that a lot of people fall into, myself included, is that when I meet someone in person and that conversation happens, I do very much feel, and I don't want to necessarily call it an obligation, but a compulsion, I guess, to have a conversation with that person and educate that person and explain things to that person. And that makes sense. But when you're talking about Facebook, where there are millions and millions and millions of people, if you do that to literally everyone you meet, like, I mean, you're just going to lose yourself. And so like there's sort of a healthy amount of like, I'm separating myself from this and curating my space a little bit more. And doing that has made my Facebook a much happier place to exist.
Yeah, and I think one of the confusions that takes place a lot of the time is people will be like, oh, we're so quick to unfriend, we're so quick to block, but it's like, we're quick to unfriend in real life, right? You wouldn't invite Joe Schmo who uses the word libtard on your Facebook feed out to the bowling league, right? No one in real life is like, so he comes, right? You're just like, no, I don't want, right? We're way more restrictive with our friends in person than we are on Facebook. But Facebook, and more importantly, the culture of performance, the democratization of conversation that social media takes place, has taught us that it's bad to silence people's voices, even if it just means like not seeing them on your personal feed, not allowing them to make your world in particular worse. And again, when you put it in the context of quote unquote real life, it's easy, right? You don't need to educate everybody. There are better ways to educate. And someone truly seeking education doesn't do it by disagreeing with someone on a news article they posted on their Facebook wall, right? I use, and Callie can confirm this, I use Callie as an educational resource all the time, but I don't do it on her Facebook wall, right? I'll be like, all right, tell me this. How come if I'm wearing a hammock and my penis is showing through it, That's close. I don't know why they kicked me out of Target.
That's an actual phone call. Like Eli called me and was like, hey, so this thing happened and I'm not sure what's going on.
And I feel ashamed and I don't feel like I should have to. It's a whole thing. We've moved past it. I'm not allowed in that Target anymore. I don't want to get into it. But like, there's nothing wrong with using the people in your life as educational resources, but there's a right and a wrong way to do it. You know, one of the things that I'm working on right now is a blog called The Right Way to Be Wrong. And it's because social media has informed us that like, ooh, there's forbidden knowledge, right? It's actually really easy to find out why black people don't have lower IQs than white people, right? There are lots of ways to find out that information.
Right, not difficult.
It is not going on Alex Jules's wall and being like, well, technically a 0.8 to 1 correlate. That's not, he didn't sign up for that. I didn't sign up for that. There are great ways to educate yourself. The internet is filled with education, and some of that is personal, right? If I want to find out about trans experience or non-binary experience, I may be able to reach out to you, but I have to earn that first.
Right. And so, you know, social media has been around long enough that there's actually research on this stuff. And that's kind of Ari's wheelhouse. And there's all kinds of good stuff in our show notes here about social media and people's interactions with it and its effect on mental health. And in the time we've got left, I want to kind of go over some of that. So Ari, do you want to just kind of run down what you've got here? Because this is good stuff.
I get to do science things.
This is the wonderful world of science transition screen, in case anyone's wondering.
Got it.
I'm doing finger doodles.
Science. All right, so I've got here 4 different articles talking about people's social media usage, not only how much they use social media, but the ways that they use social media and how that interacts with their mental health. And for most of these, the people they were looking at were, young adults. I couldn't really find any that had like a general, all age groups kind of thing, because I guess, I don't know, young people are using Facebook. That's what they say. So this first study is called Frequency and Quality of Social Networking Among Young Adults, Associations with Depressive Symptoms, Rumination, and Co-Rumination. Yes, that's the title. That's very common in science to have a very long title.
Such clickbait bullshit. God
Damn it.
This was published in 2012.
Does it disprove gender studies? I bet it disproves gender studies.
Yes. All penises are conceptual.
Oh, God.
So this was kind of, the previous research before this. This is the first study chronologically that I'm talking about here from 2012. Previous research had shown that social networking and social media can be linked with an increase in depressive symptoms, but it was not clear whether that was because people are just using social media too much or because maybe they're using social media incorrectly or using it in ways that negatively affect their mental health. So in this study, they measured the ways that people are using social media, looking at whether they were engaging in more positive or more negative interactions. So, like, are they liking the puppy pictures or are they arguing with the Nazis? Although this was in 2012, so the Nazis weren't as big of a deal as they are now. Sad times. So they found...
Sorry, 2012 or 1942? When were we?
I don't know. So they found that depressive symptoms were not significantly correlated with the time that people spent on social media, but they were significantly correlated with the amount of negative interactions that people had. And that was more true for people who tended to have high levels of rumination. So they tend to think and rethink about, the negative things that they've seen on Facebook or their negative interactions. Those people were more likely to go on to develop higher levels of depressive symptoms, whereas even the people who had kind of negative interactions on social media, but they didn't, spend all their time thinking about it or rehashing it in their mind, they were probably pretty fine. This was just a correlation, so you can't establish that like the social media caused it. It could be that like the depression is leading to these more negative interactions on Facebook, but that gives us some indication that, it's not the time you're spending on social media, it's the way that you're using it. And that's a common theme in a lot of this research. Another one looked at, an article from 2013 looked at the role of social comparison, which is something that we've been talking about. People going on Facebook and seeing all the cool, vacation pictures of your friends and all the cool stuff that they're doing and bragging about whatever it is.
Everyone's happier than me.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So, so they looked, a very similar type study. I think it was a lot of the same authors on this study. And they actually looked at it over a period of time. They looked at it over a period of 3 weeks. So they did all the measurements at one time and then all the measurements again 3 weeks later. And they found that people who were using social media as a way to compare themselves to others and coming to the conclusion that they were lesser than others, predictably, it caused higher depressive symptoms both immediately and 3 weeks later. So again, it's the way that you're using social media. This one is really interesting. This article just came out in 2018, which would be this year. Looked at vague booking. That's a pretty interesting concept. Callie does it sometimes. I do it occasionally. Yep. Yeah, a lot of people do.
Guilty.
Sometimes vague booking can be, a good thing, like, oh, I have, some really exciting news that I'm going to be able to share in the future, but it's not locked in yet, so I don't want to, spill the beans. But usually vague booking is like, oh, if you don't like what I have to say, then go fuck yourself. And they're like, who is this talking about? And it's like, nobody, I don't want to talk about it.
Right.
Well, if you don't want to talk about it, maybe you shouldn't post it. Anyway, so this was looking at, could vague booking actually be it says here, vague booking could serve as a warning behavior for individuals who may be experiencing some mental health issues, which, anecdotally seems pretty true just in common sense.
If they surveyed us,
right.
I'd be like, oh, right. I know those 4 people.
Right.
So
they should get treatment.
Yeah.
So again, they looked at, the time people are spending on social media, the different ways that they're using it, and, times that they're vague booking. And they found that, the different ways and times that people spent on social media didn't really predict negative mental health, but vague booking did predict loneliness and suicidal thoughts. Now, when I say predict, that's a statistical term. It doesn't mean that this was like predicted it in the future. It means that they're statistically related, controlling for other variables.
Right.
So this doesn't necessarily mean that vague booking causes suicidal thoughts. It definitely could be, the other direction, or it could be a bidirectional relationship. Bidirectional. That's a bi joke. The problem with a lot of this research is that, again, it's hard to do this experimentally. It's hard to, assign people to use social media in certain ways. So you have to take the existing data. And because of that, it's a correlation. It's just that there's a relationship between these two. We don't know that there's any sort of cause going on. And then I've got one more, which I think is really interesting and actually pretty, what's the word? I don't know, like positive, encouraging, that kind of thing. It's looking at, the title of the paper is Psychological Benefits of Being Authentic on Facebook. And that's something that I and many other people try to do. They looked at the degree to which people the degree to which a person's actual self lined up with the self that they presented on Facebook, which, ties in perfectly with a lot of what we've been talking about. And they cited some previous research showing that, in offline, being able to express your authentic self is associated with good things. It's better for your mental health. You have more positive view of the world, view of yourself. You have better social support, greater psychological well-being, all of that. Whereas, as any trans person can tell you, any queer person who's, forced into the closet can tell you, having to push down your authentic self and not be able to be that is bad for your mental health. Not a surprise, really. So they looked at the same thing on Facebook. If people are presenting themselves as their actual selves, are they happier? Possibly. And this was indeed found. So more authenticity on Facebook was related to more social connectedness, higher life satisfaction, and lower levels of anxiety, depression, and stress. Can't tell whether it's, the people who are happier present themselves better, more accurately on Facebook, or whether the presenting yourself accurately on Facebook leads to better mental health. Kind of up in the air, but there is some preliminary evidence that, you may want to think about maybe trying to be a bit more authentic on Facebook and be who you actually are rather than who you think your friends want you to be. Aw, very good life lessons from science.
Yeah, and that's interesting. I mean, that anecdotally, that kind of lines up with where I'm at. I know just generally speaking, I mean, I'm happier when I feel like I'm being honest about who I am, and there are lots of reasons why somebody might not do that, and it's definitely a lot of pressure off when you can just be like, you know, fuck it, here's where I'm at lately, whether that's in a good way or a bad way. So, you know, through doing all of the sort of research and reading and stuff that I've done, there's some takeaways that I've gotten and things that I'm like trying to do more to have a healthy relationship with social media in general, but also specifically just with my phone, because like I am that stereotypical person who's just constantly attached to my phone. And so the sort of bullet points that I came up with, and Ari and Eli, you can add your own if you have any. The first one is to just curate your space and seek out things that actually help you. So, you know, if that means creating a bubble that people who are loving and affirming of you, and where you're not having to constantly defend your humanity, then do that and be unapologetic about it. And if you feel like you have too much of that and you need to step outside your bubble, then leave that, as long as it's actually helping you and making you happier. The other is to be merciless with the block and unfriend button. Don't feel guilty for removing people from your space who aren't benefiting it. Set and enforce boundaries. This is one that I learned from Greta Christina. She is a boss at setting boundaries and enforcing them on Facebook, and saying like, here are the kind of comments that are okay. Here are the kind of comments that aren't. I don't want any comments on this post, et cetera, et cetera. I started doing that sort of thing, and my Facebook became so much of a happier place. Take some time before you post something. So consider what you're trying to accomplish, and if what you're saying is an accurate reflection of your feelings and who you are and what you want to do or what you want to say. Is it just because you're angry, or is it because you're legitimately trying to say this thing? Just being more intentional. Think about the notifications you have set on your phone. So the standard that I have set just from doing some reading is the only time my phone sends me a notification is when an actual human is trying to make a connection with me. So like Facebook messages, text messages, phone calls, that kind of stuff. Like when someone is actually reaching out and trying to make a connection, then I get a notification. Other than that, it's all on my terms. It's when I decide I want to open my phone to do it. Consider whether or not you want social media apps on your phone at all. I know a lot of people have said that their lives got a lot happier when they deleted their apps from their phone completely. And, you know, I'm going to sit down at my computer, I'm going to do Facebook for 20 minutes, and then I'm going to walk away and do something else. I'm not quite there. Facebook isn't on my home screen. It's like I have to actually swipe my phone over to get to it. So it's not something I like, oh, there's that pretty blue icon on my phone, I'm just going to check that just for no reason. And this is sort of tangential to that. Be intentional with your social media use. So think about why you're there, accomplish that task, and then move on. And, you know, remember the slot machine analogy, like it exists to keep you scrolling, right? And there's this really interesting study that was done where they had people eating soup out of a bowl, right? And they had one bowl that refilled itself and one bowl that didn't. And the people who were eating soup out of the bowl that continuously refilled itself ate 75% more, but didn't report more satisfaction than the people that had the finite bowl and ate 75% less, right? And so that's a thing to keep in mind. A lot of people are talking about setting your phone to grayscale, because a lot of the design of apps with the notification badges being red and the design of the app icons, those things are deliberately designed to trigger this thing in your brain that makes you attracted to it, right? And setting your phone to grayscale sort of breaks that mold. It makes your screen less interesting, and so it becomes more utilitarian. I'm doing it for this purpose. I'm going to accomplish this purpose, and then I'm going to set it down and walk away. I don't know if I'm there, but that's a thing a lot of people talk about. Use selective audiences. So think about who's going to see your posts, who's going to engage, and curate your audience accordingly. So like I may make a post that I don't want my coworkers to see because I'm talking about work. You know, don't feel bad about curating your audience in that way. And then the last thing is don't be afraid to take breaks. You know, I'm not feeling particularly healthy today, and I don't know that Facebook is going to fix that. So you know what? I'm just going to set my phone down and I'm just going to watch TV all day, and I'm not going to engage at all today. And, you know, there's that FOMO, that fear of missing out, to overcome. And every time I do it, basically, I just think to myself, like, you know what? I've done this before. The world didn't end. Nothing earth-shattering happened that I'm super bummed I missed out on the last time I took a day off Facebook or Twitter or whatever. today is probably going to be the same thing. I can safely step away from this, and I can count on the fact that things are probably going to be okay afterwards. And it might sound silly that you have to think yourself through that stuff, but like that's where I'm at, right? I have a very addictive personality. I get very easily hooked into things that give me those dopamine hits, and I can't disengage completely because social media does add value to my life. And so I just have to be more deliberate, more mindful, and more thoughtful of the ways that I engage with social media. And so those are the sort of takeaways that I found. Ari, Eli, do you have anything to add? Anything else there?
I agreed with all of that, but I had some practical ones. Log out whenever you're done and log back in whenever you're starting.
Oh,
Don't
yeah.
leave yourself logged in. Log out. If you want to go. It's 2 clicks, but those 2 clicks will make a difference. Delete the apps from your phone. In my opinion, get them off your phone. My life got so much better when I took the apps off my phone. The curate audience thing that you just mentioned, I think, is a great thing. One of the things that I love is some of the ladies, and perhaps gentlemen, but some of the ladies on my friends list have slut lists where they post like pictures of themselves in outfits that make them feel, sexy and empowered. And they have a curated list of people who can see those photos and statuses and have that talk, and they can do it in a safe place where they won't feel shamed or they won't feel objectified or something like that. And that's perfectly reasonable to do. I have a bunch of lists. I've got the public one, which is, hey, everybody, Jordan B. Peterson's a tool. And then there's
Right.
pictures of my wife, which are just, I'm very protective of my family. And so none of that ever goes into the public thing. That's always just for Facebook friends. And then within the Facebook friends, I have groups, right? There are like things that are just for my New York friends, or that are just for like my old friends from like college and stuff like that. And it's perfectly fine to curate in that way and not to be afraid to curate. And hack your algorithm. Hack your algorithm starting right now. Put in the 10 minutes it takes to go through the people you care about. And right, so again, the science on this is pretty clear. When you comment on something, they're going to show you a lot more of that person's posts. So like, you want to see Ari's dog? Get on there and be like, they are so cute. Heart. Then it will feed
Talking
you
about
more
me, of
of
course.
that. Yes, absolutely.
Right.
Both in my case. It will feed you more of that person and their content. And then the things that make you unhappy, don't engage with them. More importantly, don't pause on them, because Facebook tracks how long you're reading a thing, how long you pause on it. Do you start to write a comment and then stop? Facebook tracks all of that. All social media tracks all of that. They track the tweets that you start to write and then delete. I mean, if you look into the science of this stuff, they do a tremendous amount of work on not just what you say and what you interact with, but how you look at things, how much time you spend on things. They have a tremendous amount of data on that. And so take the time to hack your Facebook and make it the place you want it to be. Let it be yours, just like your TV, right? You don't watch shows you don't want to watch. You're not like, fine, 6 episodes of Jersey Shore. I guess I have to make sure.
Right.
Don't want to be closed-minded. There's Snooki. She just ate a baby. All right.
Right.
Doing the right thing. Right. You owe it to yourself to treat yourself as well as possible, and nothing is real. Facebook's not real, but neither are you. So just be
Right.
as kind to yourself and everyone else as possible, right?
Ari, what do you got?
So one thing that I've been trying to do personally, and I would recommend for people if it's possible for them, is to diversify their support network. So I know, I have had problems with, and I see other people on my timeline who seem to have a lot of social investment in Facebook. And I definitely have had that. And I don't think it's always necessarily a bad thing, because, I have made some very close, friends and people that I consider very important in my life on Facebook, and people who I now see outside of Facebook who I've met on Facebook. So I'm not saying like it's bad to make friends on Facebook or it's bad to get social support from Facebook. But I do want to, encourage people to have, social interactions in other areas of their lives as well, especially in person, because there are some things that you just can't get from an online interaction that's really important to your social and mental health, when it comes to interacting with other people. So, yeah, that would be something that I would recommend. Like if there's someone in your area who you talk to on Facebook, but you don't see them a lot, maybe instead of chatting with them, ask them if they would like to go have a meal or something. Maybe even take them on a date if they're a cutie pie. That kind of thing.
I'm gonna reach out to my fellow straight white men and say, you can stop trying to take people on dates on Facebook.
Yeah.
Another healthy
maybe,
tip.
yeah, maybe that
great.
came from my place of privilege, but
Oh, God, that's a perfect place to end it. Eli, thanks for the time, my friend. As always, good stuff.
All right, I'm gonna go ask Ari out on Facebook.
Woohoo!
Specifically on Facebook.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yep, just on
Has
Facebook.
to be that way.
I'm posting on their wall.
Oh, well, that, my friends, is going to do it for this episode of the Gaytheist Manifesto. If you think what we do here is important, please share this around to your friends. Search the Gaytheist Manifesto on Facebook and Twitter to find us there. I'm at Gaytheist Callie on Twitter. You can email us at podcast@theGaytheistManifesto.com. We are a part of the Trans Podcaster Visibility Initiative. We're a group of trans podcasting badasses working to bring more trans voices into podcasting and other content creation. Search the Trans Podcaster Visibility Initiative on Facebook for more info. And does Ari have a thing?
Oh, hello, everyone. This is Professor Dumbledore. Albus Dumbledore, to be correct. No, I'm not the one from the first two movies, and I'm not even groovy Irish Dumbledore. I'm Potter Puppet Pals Dumbledore, yes. Well, Ari didn't write an outro, so here I am. Well, we've been talking about social media, and you can friend Ari Stillman on Facebook because they spend probably too much time on there, according to Eli. I, myself personally, Albus Dumbledore here, do not spend much time on Facebook. I have been on thin ice with the students and with the administration since the Naked Time incident. But, you can contact me through Ari if you want to, or you can email them, aristillman4@gmail.com. And now I'm going to throw it over to my favorite professor, Professor Snape. Yes, well, everyone here is assigned to go to the dungeon and listen to the SJW Circle Jerk. That is your potions assignment. And you can also listen to the Sis are getting out of hand. I am also part of Puppet Pal Snape, not movie Snape. Anyway, I died.
Wow.
Well, so did Dumbledore. Spoilers! You're gonna have to trigger warn this episode.
I have no idea what just happened.
All right.
If you want to,
I screenshotted Callie's face during the Dumbledore monologue, and it's my everything. It's frozen positivity. It's just
Wow!
Oh, God. If you want to support the show and the activism we do, you can head to patreon.com/The Gaytheist Manifesto. Make a per episode donation as little as $1 per episode. And if you can't do that, you can give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts. Share us around to your friends. It all helps and it all makes a difference. Before we go, I want you to know that if you're lost, you're hurting, you're scared, if you feel like no one cares and no one understands, you need to know there's a community out here that loves you, cares for you, knows that you're capable of amazing things and that you are worthy of love. If you're struggling, please don't be afraid to reach out. Till next time, friends, this is the Gaytheist Manifesto.